Assalamualaikum everyone. I want you to think about 3 things that you loved doing as a kid. Activities that made you lose track of time, and things that you did just for fun. Don't overthink it. I'll give you a couple seconds. Now, when was the last time you did one of these things? Was it last year? 3 years ago? 5? Do you even remember? As kids, play was our default. It's how we learned, explored, and expressed ourselves. But somewhere along the way, we stopped playing. And the things that once filled us with wonder got replaced by schedule, deadlines, and responsibilities. I want you to imagine your childhood. You're a 6-year-old child standing in your backyard. And there's a simple cardboard box right in front of you. A box. But to you, that was a spaceship that you took to explore distant galaxies. Or even better, a submarine that you took to dive into the depth of the oceans. In those moments, there were no limits, only endless possibilities. For me, it was a group of mismatched dolls and stuffed animals that became my real audience. I'd line them up neatly on the floor and host elaborate tea parties, giving each one a distinct voice as we discussed imagining adventures. Those dolls, they weren't just toys. They were my way of dreaming up worlds where anything and everything felt possible, and discovering how far my imagination would take me. But then life got busy. The tea party stopped, and the dolls went back inside the box. And the magical worlds I had once created for myself got replaced by school, homework, university applications. I want you to take a look at this. The New York Times magazine once had their cover story about play. At the bottom of this it says, "It's deeper than gender, seriously but dangerously fun, and a sandbox for new ideas about evolution." Sounds great, right? But do you see any adults on that? Tabitha DeAngelo, a professor at the College of New Jersey, did a little experiment. She asked her friends to take pictures of their kids pretending to be adults and send it to her. Here's how they looked like. I hear some laughs, but is this the picture that you want to send your kids or your future kids? The adults are busy, unhappy, and don't play? As we grew up, something shifted. Play started feeling silly. We got serious, we grew up, play became for recess, but recess wasn't on the adult schedule. But what if I told you we actually have been playing all along? What if the things that we now call serious, like problem solving, negotiation, brainstorming, are just grown-up versions of games we used to play as kids? You don't believe me? Well, how many of you ever did a show and tell at school? You know, the ones where you're standing in front of a group of people with a little toy in your hand and you're trying to convince everyone how it's the coolest thing in the world? Well, what's the difference between that and a project pitch or a speech? You're standing in front of a group of people trying to convince them how what you're saying is the coolest thing ever. What about a team meeting? Why don't you think about that as a side quest that you and your teammates are on, and you're just trying to defeat the inbox monster before it eats up your afternoon? And everybody's favorite activity, networking. That big scary word is just grown-up version of, "Hey, do you want to go play with me?" We have been playing all along. We just started calling it other things to make it sound more important. We call it unwinding or a hobby as if we need to justify having fun, as if joy needs to earn its place on our calendar. But what we actually need to remind ourselves of is that play isn't a break from productivity. It's the birthplace of it. You see, as kids, through play, we made sense of the world around us. A stick wasn't just a stick, it quickly became a sword that taught us courage, and a blanket that turned into a royal cape that allowed us to step into a role of a leader. Through play, we experimented with ideas before we had the words for them. Think about a child building a tower with blocks. When it collapses, do they give up? No, they try again and again and again with a different approach each time, and without realizing it, they're learning problem solving, resilience, and the basis of engineering. While childhood play was about exploring possibilities, adult play is about reconnecting with creativity, with others, and with the parts of ourselves that still crave wonder and spontaneity. It's a mindset. It's a freedom to explore, to experiment, to engage with the world without the pressure of an outcome. It's the moments when we lose track of time because we're fully immersed in something that brings us joy. Play can be structured like a board game with friends or spontaneous like cracking jokes in the middle of a serious conversation. Play can be physical, strategic, purely silly, but at its core, play is the key to unlocking the most creative versions of ourselves. Stanford University put this exact statement to the test. They brought together two groups of people, and they gave them the same challenge. Generate as many ideas as possible. Now, the first group worked in person. They were sitting in the same room, bouncing ideas off each other naturally. And the second group, they worked online. They were sitting in one space the whole time, staring at a small video call screen. Now, put your hands up if you think the in-person team generated more ideas. Interesting. Now, hands up if you think the virtual team generated more ideas. Okay, a couple. Well, the results, if you said the in-person team, you would be correct. The in-person team generated 15 to 20% more ideas, and their ideas were rated as more original. But why? Researchers found that when people meet in person, they're able to interact with each other. They shift in their seats, they gesture as they speak, they play with their ideas. Now, this movement, this freedom, fuels creativity. On the other hand, those in virtual meeting were just stuck in the same spot, and their thinking was just as restricted as their movement. Even big companies are starting to catch on to the idea of play. Take Google, for example. They didn't just embrace play. They made it a part of how they work. They created something called the 20 times percent program, which basically means take a chunk of your day and work on something completely separate that has nothing to do with your workload, but just something you're passionate about. And this wasn't just a nice perk that employees loved. It actually worked. It led to some of Google's biggest innovations. Ever heard of AdSense? That multi-billion-dollar idea that revolutionized online advertising? It started as a side project. Not a structured meeting, no strict goals, just a space for someone having the space to explore, to experiment, to think outside of the box. Now, I experienced something similar last summer. I had the opportunity to work at Saad as a summer student. And on the very last day, we were staring down a task that has been passed around for weeks without getting done. It was basically a game of hot potato, except nobody wanted to catch it. But this wasn't just any task. It was for cohort 1's graduation. It was the first ever graduation. Over 300 guests were expected. It was one of the main main activities of the event. Everyone would see it, everyone would interact with it, and it wasn't done. So we did what anyone else would do. We locked ourselves in the meeting room and we said, no one is doing anything or working on anything else until this task is done. Now at first, ideas were flowing. First hour was great. Second hour, we got a little quieter. Third, we were drained. You know the type of drain that all you can think about is food? That was our situation. But then Google's homepage caught someone's eye. It was the time of the Olympics, so they had this Olympic-themed Finding Waldo game. And at first, we were just looking. Then someone clicked. And then another person. And then the third. And the room quickly turned into a full competition. We were all laughing, cheering, questioning each other's eyesight, and we forgot about the task. It was a complete distraction. We were wasting time. The task was never going to get done. How's the graduation going to look like? But in the middle of all of this, something interesting happened. When we finally remembered we had a task to work on, and we got back to it, the energy in the room was different. Matter of fact, it came back to the room. The tension has lifted, ideas started flowing again, and we finally finished the task. So what I thought was a small distraction was actually a spark, a reset, a reminder that play doesn't always look productive, but sometimes it's the very thing that you need to make productivity happen. So let's make that spark intentional. Let's stop waiting for burnout to tell us we need a break, and let's play on purpose. So I'm going to ask everyone to take out their phone right now. Yeah, you can take it out. And I want you to go to your calendar for this upcoming week. And I want you to find the first meeting or a really big task that you have and schedule a 30-minute walk just before. I don't want you to have your phone, no podcast, nothing on that walk. Zero distractions. Just you, your ideas, and let them flow. And on that walk, I want you to ask yourself a very important question. How can I make this upcoming task or meeting more fun? Not faster, not easier, just more fun. Do that for a week. and see what happens. Because play isn't just fun, it's fuel. And here's the best part, it's a ripple effect. When you make space for it, you inspire others to think differently, take risks, and bring new ideas to life. So now close your eyes. I want you to imagine that same cardboard box I mentioned at the beginning of my speech. But this time, you're not a child, you're an adult. And I want you to ask yourself, what is this box? Maybe it's an idea wanting to be explored. Maybe it's a passion you've put aside for a while. Or maybe it's that missing spark to reignite your creativity. Whatever it is, open it and go play.